Hey guys, I'm Mark, and today I wanted to go over my herb bed with you. Last night I spent a good bit of time planting up all my herbs in this bed here next to me, and I guess I just wanted to make this video to show you a little bit about how I plant up my herb garden, at least how I did it this year. And then I'm going to give you some cultural things about how I plant herbs and take care of herbs in general. And then I'm going to also talk about the different things specifically that I planted, the different types of plants, and what they're used for, what I use them for, why I like them so much. So I guess to start off, this bed in front of me is 8 foot long, 8 foot wide by 24 feet long. It's the same size as all the other beds in my garden, or a lot of the other beds in my garden. But this one is a little bit different in terms of what kind of soil is in it. I kept the soil. I knew that this bed was going to be my herb bed because it's right by the gate and it's very accessible. So at nighttime when I'm getting ready to cook dinner, I can just kind of roll the golf cart up here, hop out, snip my herbs, get back on and go on my way. So I knew that this was going to be my herb bed. And when I filled the beds up with soil, I treated this one a little bit differently. So all my other beds have 2 yards of topsoil, 1 yard of cow manure, and then for this year, I also added 1 additional cubic yard of mushroom soil. This bed, I didn't want it to be quite as fertile. A lot of herbs don't really like very super fertile ground, like something like a tomato or a potato would like. So I kept things a little bit calmer in this bed, if you will. So this bed's got 3 yards of native topsoil, and then about a half a yard of cow manure, and then another half a yard of mushroom soil. And that's all mixed in there underneath of this wood chip mulch. On top of it is wood chip mulch. It's about 3 inches thick. And I think that this year, from here on out, I'm gonna keep this bed a no-till bed. Every year, I'm just gonna keep topping off with wood chips or shredded mulch. And I'm just gonna not try to disturb the soil as much as possible and see what happens. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing so far with this mulch being on here because I put these wood chips on here about 3 weeks ago, and when I was digging around here and punching all these holes last night, there was a ton of earthworms going on and around and about. So that puts a smile on my face. Anyway, so I'll go on about what I have in here. Basically, everything that's in here is pretty much symmetrical as the whole bed goes in terms of how it's laid out. So let me get my stick. I forgot my stick. I wanted to have a pointer stick to kind of show you around in here. So this is the center of the bed, and this right here is French Tarragon. This came up from last year, and it came up so healthy I just didn't want to move it. So I'm going to keep it where it's at, and I balanced it off with some rosemary on this side, and this is dead center. So going this way, pretty much everything is a mirror image of what's on that side. It kind of looks pretty cool. It looks like when you're looking at a small area of the garden, it looks like there's a whole bunch of different things going on, but it's really just a mirror image of what's going on over there. Anyway, I guess I'll start at the middle. I guess the camera can pick this up. I've got rosemary here, like I said, planted. That is a really awesome variety that we like at the nursery. It's called barbecue rosemary, and the reason why they call it barbecue rosemary is because it was bred to have these this really awesome vigor to it. I mean, it just takes off and gets these long fronds on it, and these fronds, these long sticks of rosemary, can be used as shish kebabs. So you can put like chicken and things on them and throw them on the grill. I've never done it, but I've seen pictures of it on the internet, and it looks pretty cool. But it's a fantastic rosemary, very aggressive. It's done really well for us. Moving on, there's some marjoram planted on this side and that side. I've got a variegated kind and then a regular marjoram over there. I've got one called dwarf savory, winter savory. That's an interesting herb. I've never grown it before, but it's one of those things that you can use, from what I understand, on roasts and a lot of, like a typical or harder herb like rosemary or like thyme. You could put it on chicken or roasts or things, do like a rub. I've also heard you can put it in soup. So I'm looking forward to see how that one turns out. A lot of my harder herbs, if you will, I call them harder herbs, the herbs that go into fall and go into winter, like rosemary or savory or thyme. I've got those harder herbs planted sort of in the center of the garden, and then on the edges, I'm going to do some of the softer herbs, some of the annual herbs like basil and parsley and dill and things like that. And those will get swapped out during the course of the season as they fizzle out or go to bolt. I'll go in, rip them out, and plant them in with something else. Anyway, starting in the middle with the hard herbs. So French tarragon, that came up from last year. That's a really awesome herb to use in like a gravy. Like if you're gonna make chicken and have a gravy, what you just do is take one of these or a few of these and throw them in your gravy while you're stirring it up. Don't chop it or anything like that. Just throw it in there, move it around with your spatula, and it'll leach out a lot of really cool flavors. And then you just remove this after just a couple minutes, and you'd be surprised what it does to the gravy. Anyway, French tarragon is awesome. Big fan. Echinacea purpurea. I just thought I wanted some color in here, and I also really like the bees and butterflies and whatnot, so I threw a couple of those in. I'm probably not going to use them as an herb. I know people use them in tea and things. I don't really use them so much for that, but it sort of counts as an herb, and what the heck, I threw it in here. I thought it'd be kind of fun. And then thymes, I've got 4 different kinds of thyme in here, 2 plants of each kind. And I know it's probably really confusing as far as the camera goes because it just looks like a mishmash, but what's over here mirrors this, and then over here, and then over here, same thing. It's a whole, it all just spreads out like even, but the varieties change. So over here I've got narrow-leafed French thyme, and there's English thyme over here, and then on this side there's a variegated lemon thyme, and then a different kind of variegated lemon thyme on this side. And then the thymes I've got right up next to some oregano. The oregano that we find is probably the most aggressive for us at the nursery is the hot and spicy variety. It's called hot and spicy oregano, and it just takes off. It does extremely well in a small pot. It does really well in the garden as well. I grew it last year. It was awesome. That's a full sun sort of thing, but it will like some part shade too. And that's why I actually planted it next to or underneath what's going to be a huge plant, which is right here. This is a pineapple sage. It's a type of salvia. Some salvias just get enormous. It's one of the better plants you can buy for your money. I mean, for a couple bucks, this plant is going to get huge. It's going to attract all kinds of hummingbirds. It's got these really nice red flowers on it. But anyway, it'll get huge into a nice big ball, and it's going to kind of cast some shade in here. I'll let the oregano sort of crawl underneath of it if it wants to, or go out this way. Sort of a little bit of an experiment I set up for myself to see where oregano really likes to be in terms of sun exposure. But anyway, that's the oregano. Next to that is some calendula. So it's English pot marigold. These are just about to start blooming, and I put them in here for really, that was part of the reason, because they're going to give me some immediate color in this bed. I think it's going to look pretty cool. You can put them in tea. People do that. I just think they're a really interesting flower in general. Next to those are a tricolor sage. Tricolor sage is an awesome plant in not just for cooking, but for just the looks of it, because it like matches so many different things. I mean, you can use it with flowers, you can use it in the herb garden. It's like one of those really versatile kinds of plants. So I always like to kind of throw that in anywhere that I can. Parsley, everybody knows parsley. This is the curled variety. I've got some flat leaf, some Italian flat leaf parsley started down at the greenhouse, but it's not quite ready to be thrown in here yet. There are several things that I'm going to kind of tuck in here over the course of the season. As this bed evolves, gets bigger, there'll be spaces that need to be filled. So I'm going to tuck some things in as I go. But an Italian flat leaf parsley is definitely going to be one of them. Nasturtiums, this is the creepy crawly that's going to kind of fill in and go find the places that nothing else is really occupying at the moment. Really neat flower. They've got a leaf much like a lotus plant. It's pretty wild. Like when the rain hits them, or when you hit them with the hose, the water just beads right off of the leaf. So they're pretty wild. Right behind that is another giant plant. This is a Mexican bush sage. It's another type of salvia that gets huge. Last year I grew this in this bed and it got like this tall. So I'm going to grow that. I gave these guys a little bit of room. I'm going to grow that out again this year. I did want to say that while I'm talking about the sages, I just wanted to throw in something like a little bit of a tip that, that applies to a lot of plants in general. You'll notice that, I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but I cut the tops off of these plants. They used to be, you know, kind of sort of leggy, a little bit stretched out. So I just took my scissors and, I mean, I'll do it again. I'll just take the tops right off of them. And that's called pinching. We call that pinching. And what that does is you're removing the apical node, or the top node of the plant. And that changes the way that the hormones are going around in the plant, with specifically related to a hormone called auxin. And what that does is it'll stimulate the axillary buds going down, or the side buds that are going down the stem of the plant, to start taking over, and they'll start branching out. Instead of going straight up, now the plant's growing out. So it's a little trick that you can do to get things a little bit more bushy. We do it with, like I say, all kinds of plants. Chrysanthemums in the fall, that's a big thing. Nowadays, the chrysanthemums, you don't have to pinch them much anymore. They sort of take care of themselves. But back in the day, that was a huge job if you grew fall chrysanthemums, was to get out in the field and pinch the tops off all day to make them more bushy. But like I said, that's a little bit of a tip that you can do. I like it in this situation because it's going to create a much rounder plant right here in the middle. It's going to sort of be a focal point of this whole herb garden. So I want it to look nice. And, you know, it is going to get pretty big if I just let it go. So I'm going to come in probably a few times throughout the season and cut it back even that much more. And that's just going to round things off a little bit more. It's going to grow into this one eventually. They're going to kind of merge together, but as long as they're not like sort of lopsided looking, I don't really care. Anyway, that's that's pinching. So moving forward, we've got some English lavender here. I wanted to throw some of that in because, well, we had it at the nursery and we have a lot of it. Number two, I'm really interested in, there's a study that was done about using certain aromatic herbs stored with potatoes. And what they found is that it can slow down the progression of the potato eyeing out, or sending out, you know, little eyes and starting to sprout. So I'm gonna try saving some English lavender this year and putting it in with my potatoes and just see what happens. But this variety is called Hidcote Blue. It's a really good seller for us. Going down the way, you'll see there's two trenches here. And these two trenches are where I direct seeded some of my soft herbs. Specifically right here are basils. This is a Prospero Basil. It's a downy mildew resistant variety. There's two different kinds I've got. I've got the regular Prospera and then the Prospera Italian large leaf. They're both Italian basils, but one's supposed to have a little bit bigger leaves than the other. So I figured I'll grow them side by side and see the real difference for myself. But growing them in a bed like this, I will say, when you use the mulch like this, it's great for direct seeding herbs because you have the mulch right up, slammed up against where the row is. And what that does is the row, the seeds that are germinating, the soil right there wicks in moisture from its surrounding, from the surrounding area. Right underneath these wood chips, it stays pretty moist. And by virtue of having these wood chips right here so close, I have to water these seedlings. I will have to water these seedlings that much less than if it was just like bare ground. And a little trick that I do for getting my lines nice and straight like this, it's actually pretty simple. I take a 2x12 and I lay it across the bed like this. And I actually walk on that 2x12 like this. What that does is it disperses my weight. So I'm not getting as much soil compaction than if I was just walking in here like I am now. But I use the 2x12, I get it nice and perpendicular to the edge of the bed, and I stand on that, and I just use my hands and I go right up against the side of the 2x12 and scoop the mulch away, and it winds up creating this really nice line like that, and it does it pretty quickly. I found it's a pretty neat little method. Anyway, those are the direct sow herbs on this side of the bed. On that side of the bed, I'll just tell you because it's a mirror image, pretty much everything else is. There's really no sense in going over there right now. But on the other side of the bed, I've got 2 lines just like this where I have dill planted. It's a dill variety that's grown for its foliage and not for so much for its seed pods. When you buy herbs, there's a lot of different cultivars of herbs, just like anything else. And when it comes to dill, a lot of people like to harvest the heads and use them for pickling and stuff. And a lot of people just like the straight up the foliage to use as fresh dill. And then you can buy a variety that's good for one, or you could buy a variety that's good or bred for the other, or you can just buy one that's good for the middle, and you could do both with. But I'm growing one that's good for foliage, and I'm also got a cilantro over there that's called Calypso, and that's grown under the same principle. So cilantro produces seed heads, and you get seed out of cilantro is called coriander, right? So you can get cilantro seed that you plant if you want to harvest coriander, and then you've got other varieties that you would plant if you just want to harvest the fresh herb itself. So I got the cilantro varieties called Calypso, and that's grown for its foliage. I forgot. Let me see the name of the dill. The dill is called Thalia. That's the name of it. Thalia is the variety of dill that I'm growing for its foliage. Anyway, wood chips tucked away to the side. Great way to grow soft herbs. And then to finish out, right on the ends, I just planted some a few oddities in here. This is lavender that I've got right here on the corner of the bed. I thought that I'd plant some lavender right out against the corner because I think it's the driest area of the whole bed. I mean, if you think about this raised bed as like a piece of cheese or something that you leave out, well, if you leave a piece of cheese out, the first thing to dry up are the corners. And I think it's gonna be the same thing. Well, I know it's the same thing with this bed, and I think the lavender is gonna appreciate that a little bit. Plus, as you're walking by, you might like brush it a little bit and you get the lavender smell. I think that'll be pretty cool. So that's called Goodwin Creek lavender that's on the end. I've just got, I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but there's just a little plug of chives here. And then I've got the same thing down there and then 2 more down there. This is not an herb. Well, as far as I know, this is Asclepias tuberosa. This is just our native butterfly weed, we call it. It's got an orange flower on it, and it's the host plant. It's one of the host plants for the monarch butterfly. So I just like putting it in here because it's a perennial that can stay on the end here. If it spreads a good bit, I'll let it spread some. I can kind of keep it contained up against the side. But if it takes up this whole side of this bed eventually, I mean, I'd be cool with that. It doesn't bother me much. Just a great plant. I love that plant. I put it anywhere I can, really. Moving down, I've got some lemongrass right here. Now, lemongrass is going to get huge. It's going to get really big. So I figured underneath of the lemongrass, I would plant some of this golden oregano. It's just a paler oregano, basically. It's got like a chartreuse leaf on it. And anytime you have a plant that has really like light colored leaves, like chartreuse colored leaves, they tend to not like the blazing hot sun as much as something that's got like darker leaves. And that's with trees, that's with hostas, that's with lettuce. That applies to a lot of things. So I planted these here so that the shade, eventually this lemongrass is going to get large enough that it's going to shade a little bit of this out. And I think it's going to be a little bit happier here. So that's the theory behind that. Anyway, going that way, like I said about 100 times now. Hey, sweetie pie, do you have a stick? Do you have a stick? Like I said, going that way is a mirror image of what's up here, so I'm not going to walk down and cover that. But that's my herb bed for this year. I plan on doing some more videos throughout the season of different odds and ends in the garden. I'm sure I'm going to cover this and its progression. So, you know, I hope you guys kind of keep track and keep looking back and see how this stuff goes. I'm excited to see how some of these herbs do. I've never grown some of them before. Like I said, the winter savory. So if you ever grown winter savory before, please leave me a note in the comments and send a recipe out there or something cool to do with it. And I think that'd be pretty neat for people to see. So anyway, that's my herb garden. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.